being discussed in mainstream. So the Georgia voter law, ID law is basically being discussed as specifically being boycotted by certain companies, certain corporations. So in the sense of, again, where hypocrisy shows from our politicians. Okay. So just like I've talked about many, actions of, let's say, the governor, saying mask mandates and then not, this is now, specifically again, where hypocrisy is showing, where, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, corporations should be able to have a voice as a First Amendment right, and then specifically where you turn it around and say, well, shut up, make sure you're in your place, your role, stay in your lane, kind of a thing. So again, you kind of have a little bit of hypocrisy in that way. So again, both parties do it. You just have to be astute to, again, when it's happening. But again, like we talked about, we discussed Citizens United, making corporations, on par with people, protected with First Amendment rights. So again, that is, the nature of what our Supreme Court has, said, with regards to what corporations can do. So for Senator Mitch McConnell to, negate those facts when he himself benefits, from his donors, both corporate and private. So again, when you talk about different things, you just have to, kind of see where, again, you can't have your cake and eat it too, so I figured I'd throw that out there with regards to, Coca-Cola, Delta, the MLB, a lot of different companies that are boycotting Georgia for the voter ID law. So again, different ways, talking about Citizens United last week, I just, figured I'd throw that in there because, again, it did become pertinent the next day that after we discussed it. So again, one of those things. All right. Also, I did post the prompt for the extra credit. So again, you have 2 available to you, 40 points each. So find a link to the video. So there's plenty of links online. I just posted the prompt. But again, if you want to undertake the extra credit, make sure to find the movie. So it is on 123 Movies. I just didn't want to post the link specifically. So again, you are definitely more savvy than I am that can, find a workable copy in that way. Right? All right. So again, any other questions, comments, concerns, or issues before I get into the California state government chapter?
Is anyone else's screen still loading? Or is that
is it still doing the loading?
Yeah. For me it is.
All right, I'll no worries. I will reload it just so, again, if it is happening to other people, it probably will be remedied now. Can everyone see it?
No, and I already went out and came back in. It's okay. I'm an interpreter, so I'll just figure it out.
All right. You know what? No, it's okay. Let me do it again, just to make sure, in the sense of, again, where it's at, just to, again, make sure. I'll reload it because it is already loaded.
Yeah, Lady is mentioning that she's also having the loading screen issue as well.
Okay. Okay.
You what it looks like. That's what mine looks like as well.
All right. Let me see. I will reload it off of the Google Drive, and let's see if I can share it once it's loaded, so that it's not giving everyone a loading screen. Yeah. So yeah, different technology, I guess, different connection. It might work for some and not work for others, but I will remedy the situation. So it says it's loaded. It says it's going to load. I'm in the present mode.
I almost had it. Okay, I've got it now. Okay, so does Lady. Lady has it as well.
Okay. Okay, perfect, perfect. Thank you again for letting me know because again, sometimes I have no clues. Technology on some end, connections there. So again, letting me know is always helpful. So I appreciate it, Trisha. All
Thank you.
right. So perfect. Now it looks like everyone's got it. So California state government chapter. Uh, everyone lives in California. Okay, when you're coming and attending COS, you may have been born somewhere else, but we're living the California lifestyle. Okay, um, there are positives and negatives. Okay, we're going to be talking about some of them in this chapter, discussing it, different ways in which our state functions, and the history. Okay, starting with the history. Many of you might recall this from possibly fourth, fifth, and sixth grade when we're going to be going over the missions, the gold rush, all of those nice little history that here in California we've become accustomed to. Right? All right. So again, important to go back in history, okay, when we're talking about California. Where were the first populations coming from? Okay, so historians have specifically looked at the last ice age, crossing the Bering Strait, where the first Californians were probably immigrants like the rest of us. Okay, crossing the land bridge from Asia to Alaska during the last ice age. Okay, and then they headed south for better climate of that nature. So most of the indigenous populations, okay, that started their own tribe within going south, most set up their area in which they're going to live along coastlines. Okay, so when we're talking about water, just as we know here in the valley, it is so very important for life. Okay, and it was for the early Californians coming south specifically. So many of them set up shop by coastlines. Okay, 135 nations specifically. Fragmented. Some had pacts with others. Some were warring tribes. So again, when it comes to these 135 nations, again, they're very much, they run the gamut. Okay, they can be bigger, smaller. We're going to be looking at some of the bigger ones in a illustration here in a few slides. Okay. All right. So Europeans began exploring the California coast in the early 1500s, but colonization did not start until 1769. Okay, this is when the Spanish established the mission system and military outposts. Okay, so when we're looking at this, again, Spanish influence on the west coast of our nation and more of a British English tradition on the East Coast. Okay, so again, that's where the influences come from, where again, here on the West Coast, we're more Spanish influenced. So Spain and Europe, that's why our large surnames, our large cities, Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles, all having Spanish surnames. So again, that's that influence that's coming from Europe. Okay. So colonization specifically. So when we're talking about disease, destruction, and devastation, it can't be understated. Okay, so I've said that since when early in the course, where again when we're talking about movement westward, again you're talking about diminishing native populations that may not be acclimated to interactions, personal and otherwise. Again, when we're talking about history, disease, oftentimes it wasn't human on human contact all the time. Many of it was livestock. Again, what we're experiencing now in COVID-19, whether one believes the primary narrative, if it came from an animal, a pangolin and a bat or whatever it was. But again, even back then, when you're talking about when worlds collide, Europe bringing in different livestock, and the natives also having a certain type of livestock. again, that interaction, that's also going to create diseases that people died from. Okay? So again, in the sense of interactions, you have to look at the whole scope of the interaction. All right. So today, less than 1% of California's population is Native American. Okay. So again, that's mass devastation, to the nth degree. All right. So right here, these are the bigger tribes that worked about in the area. Again, along the coastline. So right there above San Francisco, in what we would call probably around Sonoma, the Miwok. Then around the San Jose area, you have the Alta Indians. Okay, and then right there in the Central Coast area, you have the Chumash. And then right there in San Diego County, you have the Ipaw Indians. Okay, so these are the bigger tribes. Obviously, there were a lot more specifically smaller ones, that made up, not only here in the valley, okay, because many of the tribes, lived in mountainous areas, regions in which they could thrive. So again, these are the bigger ones along that way. So again, colonization didn't start till the 1700s. Okay, so Europe, specifically Spain, had been, looking around since the 1500s. But again, actual colonization and missions, that didn't start till the 1700s. Okay? All right. So the Spanish mission system. Okay, so many of you might remember fifth grade. Having to do a mission report, depending on how down your fifth grade teacher was, maybe they had you create a replica of the mission in which you chose, to present to the class. What was it about? So again, depending on if you were educated in public schools, that was one of my assignments. I know I had Mission San Luis Obispo. So I had to create that replica. So I'm sure other people did too, picking their own mission in that way. So again, I'm not going to sugarcoat what the mission system was. Okay, it was slavery, specifically again where the native populations were utilized to not only build the missions, but also to their ongoing function. Okay, so working the lands around them. So how did that happen? So oftentimes they required tribute. Okay, so when it came to requiring a certain amount of crops from the local populations of tribes, that's how they were able to do that. Okay, the Spanish came with the 3 G's. Okay, I like to refer to it as the 3 G's. Gold, God, and glory. Okay, that's what they were looking for in terms of, again, wanting to establish those 3 G's, to not only for themselves, but what their belief system was. So again, in that way, Catholicism was spread, when it came to, harshly punishing the native populations for retaining their beliefs. Okay, so it was very much indoctrinated at the time on the native populations to forget about their religious beliefs and revert that religious belief into Catholicism. Okay, so they were harshly punished for retaining these beliefs. All right, so these are the missions of California. One of them may have been your research assignment in fifth grade, or not, depending on, again, if you had to do that assignment. So again, a lot of different missions all along the coastline, trying to, again, set up along where water resides for the reason why it's life. All right. So what happened when the early California history ceases to be under Spanish control? Okay, so this happened because apart from building the mission system, the Spaniards did very little to develop that faraway possession. Okay, so again, kind of the way in which on the East Coast, okay, the colonists, had that good degree of feeling of freedom. That same way was felt with the native populations when it came to European Spaniard domination. Okay, so during this time, Mexico declared its independence in 1822. Okay, so 1822, they specifically called for independence. Once they won, a few thousand Mexicans quietly raised cattle and built small towns around their central plazas. Okay, so if you go to Mexico today, any city that you visit is going to have that same structure, okay, where your plaza is your center of town. So again, that's very much Spanish influenced architecture wise, where again, you kind of have that center hub where again, the central plaza exists. Okay. The Secularization Act, this disbanded the mission system. So during this time period, obviously Mexicans were slaves at different times, not just the native populations, but some Mexicans as well. So they called for the Secularization Act. This disbanded the mission system, which also specifically called for the end of slavery. Right? So within that area, they called for the end of slavery, right? Because again, they were victims of it in very various ways. So during this time period, Texas didn't take too kindly to that because they were still practicing slavery. Okay, remember, this is before the Civil War. So many Texans retained the help of the U.S. To thwart the ideas of, not having slavery within the area, discrepancies between Mexico and Texas. So having the help of the U.S. Government, they were able to defeat Mexico. And in the Treaty of Guadalupe, which specifically delineated land claims where we're standing 170 and some change years ago, this was Mexico, right? Just as Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, those were all considered Mexico. So again, 170, let's say about 174, 175 years ago now, that was the case. So when you're talking about what the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo did, it created the land barrier that is the Rio Grande. Okay, so that is that natural border between U.S. and Mexico. Okay, so that happened again right there in 1846, right before the discovery of gold when it came to John Marshall, Sutter's Fort, Sutter's Mill. So right there, when it came to exacerbating the war, okay, I have a hard feeling to believe that Mexico, if they knew that California had gold, the war may have dragged on a lot longer. Okay, so again, that discovery probably saved many thousands of lives. The fact that, again, it was discovered after the U.S. had won. Okay, so in that way, you see where gold was discovered and vast populations, Europeans, Chinese, started to immigrate to California to seek out what the gold rush meant. When you're embodying what the American dream is, oftentimes looking at what the gold rush was. Okay, so these are the old pictures. This embodies, again, that American dream that you can go to, across the country, set up a business or set up shop in some sort of way and, make a living for yourself. Okay? So that's what epitomized that idea to a lot of people. So this is why California is so diverse. Okay. This is the reason the gold rush is 100% the reason. You had that proverbial carrot on a stick for a lot of poor Chinese, Latinos, Europeans that were seeking out, what the gold rush meant, the American dream. So a lot of different states don't have the diversity that we do here in California. Okay, and it centers right back to where this all came from, which is the gold rush. Okay, so looking at those photos, again, you have many times where you still had race relations that were not always positive. Okay, and these were the specifically where, again, you have different races that are clashing. Okay, for the first time, because again, California is that diverse state. Okay, so you have a situation where the surge in California's population meant that it had to become a state. Okay, just to have some sort of constitution that speaks over the area, which is California. Okay, so how did this happen? So 48 delegates came together and assembled the California Constitution in 1849. Okay, they requested statehood from the U.S. government. They didn't reinvent the wheel. Okay, so they pasted and copied from different constitutions that had already existed. Okay, so other states that had already written their constitution, they just used some of it, didn't use a portion of it, we'll use some. So again, they didn't reinvent the wheel. They, as California, we didn't, come up with it organically. Okay, we made it work for what we here in California found important. Okay, so the first capital was not Sacramento. So the first capital was actually San Jose. So San Jose was the first state capital, not Sacramento. Okay. So what really pushed the California economy very early on, okay, was the railroad. Okay, specifically the Southern Pacific Railroad. Okay, so in order to better align with regards to when it comes to specifically trade, when it comes to getting goods and products across the state, which our state is huge. Our state consists of a broader piece of the western seaboard here in this country. So again, very, very large area. So railroads were very, very much the way in which commerce and trade would exist. Okay. So Leland Stanford, Stanford University, 1861, he founded the Southern Pacific Railroad. Right. So utilizing and exploiting the Chinese labor that was in excess, in the sense that the Chinese Exclusion Act at the time, which was the epitome of anti Asian ideas, where again the Chinese Exclusion Act made it illegal for Chinese to work in certain areas. So utilizing that, Leland Stanford then reverted all that labor onto building the railroads. Okay, so oftentimes working them to the bone, very, very substandard working conditions. Oftentimes they would die. And then they would just simply be buried on the side of the tracks. So again, different ways in which California existed with these early demonstrations of, again, anti-Asian hate at the time, where again you saw a high influx of Asian people, where now you're trying to understand where these ideas came from. Where again, this fear of the immigrant. Okay, so it becomes a different race throughout the years. Okay, first it was the Irish, first it was the Armenians, then it was the Portuguese, Then it was the what is it? Now it's the Mexicans. So now it's Mexicans, Central Americans. So again, a lot of different races have come and experienced this anti-immigrant rhetoric, okay, at different times. Okay? So again, understanding where it comes from. Like I said, California is a very diverse state. So we have that strength over a lot of different states where the diversity is just not there because, again, the homogenous nature of what the population may be doesn't call for diversity. Okay, so our state, again, having that gold rush really set in motion why here California is so diverse. So the Southern Pacific Railroad specifically was keen in finding ways to have city governments, city officials, politicians in their back pocket. Okay, how did they do that? So they perfected politics very early on. Okay, how do you never lose? Okay, you donate to both sides. Okay, so that's exactly what Leland Stanford did. Stanford University. He donated to both candidates that would run for office. So he knew that regardless of who won, he was in the driver's seat. So again, that's how he was able to, develop political allies, became a formidable political machine. Okay, and this was actually documented by Frank Norris. Okay, so Frank Norris, he wrote a book called The Octopus. Okay? The Octopus, referring to ways in which the Southern Pacific Railroad would come about with semi-bullying tactics to get what they wanted. Okay, being able to be in different areas, kind of illustrating this octopus, having these arms in different parts of influence over politics. Okay, and that's what they did. So again, this book by Frank Norris talked of how the Southern Pacific Railroad was able to do that. It was a fictional novel, but again, it very much spoke to the powers that be at the time. Okay? It centered on exploitation of the railroad industry over wheat producers in California. Right? And it focuses on the control for forces or businesses on individuals. Okay, so again, those forces being rights and laws that again were in the company's back pocket because they were paying both sides off. Okay, so again, very favorable legislation because they had a lot of money, control over the economy. So what was going to be traded was very much up to the Southern Pacific Railroad. Okay, they got to choose who was going to sell what and how far it was able to go on those train tracks. Okay, so when you control transportation, you control a huge component of commerce and business. Okay, so again, they were able to utilize that. All right. So Frank Norris is not the only muckraker at the time. So a muckraker is somebody who's exposing the evils of society. Okay? So again, during this time period, you'd kind of consider them, conspiracy theorists without being conspiracy theorists. They're documenting truth. Okay, so they'd probably be labeled that today, but again, they were researching their topics. They were understanding what the laws were saying. So who are these muckrakers at the time? Okay. Shame of the Cities. This is Lincoln Steffens talking about specifically the substandard notion of how, disease was able to spread, different ways in which infrastructure lacked in different cities, especially in the poorer sides of town. Ida Tarbell, she was another muckraker. So she took down Standard Oil. So Standard Oil existed as all the companies we see today. Okay, so if you're talking about Chevron, Arco, BP, Texaco, all of these were one company at one time. Okay. It was called Standard Oil. Okay. So in order to break up this monopoly that Standard Oil had, antitrust laws had to be passed. Okay. So Ida Tarbell was one of the foremost activists to break up Standard Oil because of the power that they had over the industry. Okay, so very powerful woman, very, very, not well known by a lot of people, but she should be. She took on big oil back in the day, and she won. Where again, I think climate activists, if they really truly believe it, they can take a page out of her playbook and utilize that. So next one, The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. I don't know if you had to read it your sophomore or junior year of high school, but I did. I know I did. So it was one of those eye-opening exposés, okay? How meat is packed in this country. So it would demonstrate how, rats would end up in the food, boots would end up in there, human limbs, hands that would get severed, would end up in the food. So again, exposing this, Upton Sinclair researching just how unsanitary the meat packing industry was at this time. Then you have the treason of the state. So David Phillips also talking about railroads and the power in which they had, specifically over politicians and the activities moving forward. Bitter Cry of the Children. Okay, so John Spargo, another specifically activist when it came to abuses of child labor. Okay, so abuses of child labor. There's a reason why you don't want 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds working amongst men. Okay, you're gonna get hurt. And again, John Spargo does a really good job as to why we have labor laws. Okay, why we don't want kids 15, 14, 13. I don't know, in some states it's a little lower as to again who can work. But again, this is talking about 8 and below, 9, 10-year-olds. They're little kids, and again, no matter how big they are, again, they're still little kids. And there's a reason why we have child labor laws where we have those age limits because of that. Tyler says, I'm literally eating a roast beef sandwich, dude. Oh man, it's all good, man. I like I've said, man, when it comes to climate change, I'm one of those ones that likes, being neutral. But I know I am a sucker for Fat Burger, for In-N-Out, for all the good meats that I if there is a byproduct in there that I'm not aware of, it tastes fucking good, so it's tough, it's just one of those things where, you see meat, there could be, salmonella, but again, that's just like the same as going in your car and saying, I don't want to crash. I don't want to crash. Same idea. All right. So following the color line, so Ray S. Baker really did a good job of talking about the illiteracy of African Americans. Okay, so why oftentimes the notion coming from slavery. Okay, so when you're talking about the way in which the conditioning was for a slave, knowing how to read, knowing how to write, knowing how to speak was oftentimes taboo. You would get whipped, you would get beat. So oftentimes this was ingrained in the psyche of African Americans. So oftentimes there's a struggle and a detachment now that goes along with how education in this country is run. So again, we have to understand that again, there's a disconnect, and it's historical oftentimes that we tend to not look into and delve into. So the octopus, again, another one of those muckrakers, Frank Norris. And again, Theodore Dressler, the Titan. So all of these are muckrakers. Okay, so they are trying to expose the evils of society that are existing, trying to enlighten the population to kind of see where things are. All right. So progressive changes in government. Okay, so if you are looking at this flow chart, you're seeing the arrows. Okay, so this is specifically how we here in California have been able to gain a lot more power by way of reforms. Okay, in the sense that we'll go through the flow chart in the sense of before. Okay, so the befores are that first column right there on the left. Okay, so before, party leaders chose candidates for state and local offices. Okay, so this is where party leaders were very powerful because they got to choose who these candidates were for the state and local offices. Okay. However, reforms happened. Okay, and then we have direct primaries. Okay, so we as voters now select parties' candidates. Okay, taking that power out of the hands of party bosses and party leaders. So again, more power to us as voters. Before, so state legislatures used to choose U.S. senators. Okay, so again, giving us a direct vote to our senators didn't happen until the 17th Amendment. So the 17th Amendment, now us as state voters within our boundaries, were then electing our own U.S. senators. Okay, so our two senators were then chosen by the citizens of that state rather than the state legislatures of that state. So again, giving us more power as voters. So before, only members of the state legislature can introduce bills. Okay, so again, that was the before way of doing things. Now we have initiatives. Okay, so remember when I talked about way back in the first lecture, Sean Parker. Okay, so Sean Parker putting together AMA, so the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. That was an initiative, okay, brought about by, again, a petition, okay, to the legislature to introduce AMA and put it on the ballot. So again, now us as voters can put bills before the legislature. So again, more power to us as voters. Before, only legislatures pass laws. Now with referendum, again, if there's a political hot potato that the legislature just does not want to vote on, they would rather have the citizens make their bed and sleep in it, they can issue a referendum. Okay, so this is where voters, we can vote directly on the bills. So let's say, for instance, like I mentioned that first lecture, high-speed rail. Okay, so as much as that money pit is, metastasizing, it seems like, when it comes to us as voters, we actually voted that in. Okay, so blame all of us voters in California for creating that money pit. And again, it exponentially went up in terms of how much the overall bill was. So again, one of those dip and twirls of the politicians that be the oftentimes not being forthcoming as to, again, how much these costs were going to balloon. But again, it was a referendum nonetheless. And then right there at the bottom, only courts or legislatures can remove corrupt officials. Right. So now we have more reforms where us as voters can remove elected officials. Okay, so when we're looking at recall, so right now our governor is facing a recall election. Okay, so again, now us as voters have that ability to recall our elected officials. Okay, so again, we have more power because now it's not just courts that can remove corrupt officials. We as citizens can do that. Okay, so whether one believes, being a hypocrite is worth being thrown out of office, I'll leave that up to you. The whole French Laundry Party and mass mandates, and then here he's, eating dinner without a mask and, amongst, medical officials. So again, whether that's worth a recall or not, I'll leave it up to the citizens of California. All right. So the executive branch of the state of California. So when we're talking about how the executive branch will kind of mimic the executive branch of the U.S. government. Okay, so our governor is like the president, but just again in a smaller realm. Okay, he is the most powerful public official by shaping the budget, appointing key policymakers in the executive and judicial branches. He's also responding to public opinion by taking positions on controversial issues. Okay, so lockdowns, essential businesses, non-essential businesses, those are controversial issues. And again, in the end, nobody wins, because again, when you're in a tight spot that COVID really has created, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Because again, in the nature of how populated California is, it's one of those things. He's also referred to as the chief administrator, unofficial leader of the party, and liaison to other states. Okay, so the U.S. government and other nations. So very powerful in terms of what California stands for. Okay, and we're going to get to that in a few slides. But we here in California, we have advantages that states only dreamed of. Okay, and we're going to be talking about that in a few slides. So the plural executive branch, this is where the governor himself, he's sharing power with other elected officials in the executive branch. Okay, so the lieutenant governor, the secretary of state, the state attorney general, the governor is sharing, that power realm. Okay, he doesn't just make decisions in a vacuum. He has to consult in the plural executive with other elected officials in that executive branch. Okay? So he does have formal and informal powers. His formal powers are submission of the annual budget, okay? Vetoes. So in the end, governor can always veto a bill. Calling special session. Okay, so let's say a special session regarding, how the funding of COVID-19 after the passage of the third stimulus. Okay, so that can be, calling special session based on, again, what are the needs of California and the bigger cities and the rural areas. All of these have to be discussed. Executive orders. So executive orders, the governor issued executive orders on putting a moratorium on capital punishment. Okay, so we do not issue the death penalty here in California anymore because of that moratorium built in the executive order by Governor Gavin Newsom. Whether that can be lifted in the future, maybe, in the future it could, maybe it won't, I'm not sure. But it is an executive order that was issued by our governor. So again, that notion in itself is very political. Okay, when, the idea of the death penalty, whether one agrees or disagrees. So again, taking those controversial positions on issues. Appointment powers. So the governor expressed his appointment power when now Vice President Kamala Harris, once she relinquished her Senate seat, Governor Gavin Newsom put a replacement in Alex Padilla to be alongside Dianne Feinstein for that second spot. Okay, so again, that's part of his appointment power in that way. What about informal powers that the governor has? So you can use your position to push your own agenda. Right? So in the sense of what you want to push, are you climate friendly, business friendly? Are you pro-choice, pro-life? All of these things that, again, come with informal powers. Right? Examples, Pete Wilson, he was very big in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s in California. He was not a fan of immigrants. Okay, so he used his agenda and informal power to push Proposition 187, which ended aid to illegal immigrants, Proposition 209, which ended affirmative action, okay, and Proposition 227, which did away with bilingual education. So again, pushing those informal powers at his time. Jerry Brown also did this. So Jerry Brown, our most recent governor before Gavin Newsom, he used the prison realignment. Okay, so when you guys did your paper on the video writing assignment, okay, Proposition 47, okay, which everybody talked about in their essay, I'm hoping, this was pushed by Governor Jerry Brown at the time, okay, because of, again, what was stated in the video to basically decompress the prison population that was ballooning out of control. Okay, so again, where the governor felt that prison realignment, okay, where those that would serve state time are now serving county time, again, trying to decompress the impact that many state prisons experienced in overcrowding. Okay, so, but again, where that in lies trying to solve one problem, but then possibly overlooking and creating another problem. Okay, so again, these ebb and flow, oftentimes understanding that there's a totality of the situation. Yeah, you can help out, lowering the prison population, and that's good and well. But again, you have to be cognizant of what that's creating in the community, as to, again, what we now see with, how the drug dealer talked about, that it's not a good thing, in the sense of, again, it makes his job easier. It makes his friends and not have to worry a lot of times. Children can have it, and it's just oftentimes a slap on the wrist, where, again, there's no fear involved. And again, when it comes to that, people have their opinions both ways. I'll leave it up to you guys. Again, understanding that there's an ebb and flow that goes on with trying to solve problems, but again, sometimes overlooking others. All right. So what about the California state legislature? Okay, so when we're talking about the legislative branch in the state of California, okay, so what does it look like? There are 80 members of the assembly, okay, which kind of mimics the House of Representatives, and there are 40 members in the state Senate, okay, so kind of mimicking again. So there is 120 members that make up the legislative branch here in California, okay, so 120 people that are representing, several millions that we have here in California. So again, very tough job, okay? Because again, these 120 representatives are having to pass things not just for their own small region, but for the broader state and the needs of the state as a whole. So again, very small number, very small legislature comparative to, again, what that number is representing in California's, several millions of people. So again, looking at it that way. So we do have a bicameral legislature, again, the Assembly, State Senate. Beginning in 1926, this is when California began to mirror that of the U.S. Congress. And today, specifically, our legislatures, they're meeting on an average of 200 days per year with full-time salaries to match. Right? Some have suggested that we go to a part-time legislature, save money, not make them so ego-driven and slowing things down all the time, in a lot of people's opinions. But again, when you're looking at, I guess, time management, a lot of times if you had a part-time legislature, it may push the legislature to compromise and consensus rather than fragmentation, throughout, some of those days that they're supposed to be working. So again, it's just a thought out there. It has been, floated around. I don't think it'll get anywhere because where's the legislator going to vote to cut their own hours? They're not going to do it. They're too busy giving themselves raises rather than doing that. So again, looking at it from that perspective. So they are responsible for thousands of bills in the California legislature each year. Right? So thousands of bills that, again, may not even involve the San Joaquin Valley. Okay, they can maybe talk about building an animal shelter in San Diego County, or a multiplex park in Southern California somewhere, or Northern California. So again, these thousands of bills, they're responsible for the entire state. Okay, so again, the legislature has a lot of work in that way, because again, 120 people looking out for several million. So state legislature is responsible for tackling the state's problems, both big and small. Okay? So again, that was demonstrated this past summer, when our forests were under fire, literally. It was the worst fire season this past year, I think ever. I mean, in the sense of how many fires that were, the biggest fires or the fifth biggest fires, and it was terrible. But again, the legislature making sure that holding these people accountable. Okay, if it was an arsonist, or if it was PG&E with a faulty line, okay, that's the case in several of those fires. So again, knowing what that means. Okay, and again, as California legislatures, the buck falls on them. Okay, in the sense of how are they going to remedy the situation to help us breathe better here in California, especially in the Valley, but looking at it from that perspective. So the California court system, so this is mimicking the judicial branch, okay, of the U.S. government. So California court system specifically is the largest in the nation. Okay, obviously, we have the biggest population here in California, and we have over 2,000 judicial officers and 21,000 court employees. Okay, so court employees, everything from public defenders to the court reporters to the bailiffs, all these individuals that again are involved in our court system, right? Interpreters, all those individuals. So what about our Supreme Court? Okay, so the U.S. Supreme Court has 9 individuals. In the California State Supreme Court, there is 7. Okay, so it's still an odd number, but it's 2 less than at the national level. Okay, so 1 Chief Justice and 6 Associate Justices. Okay, and one thing our state does that I really like is the idea of justices serve 12-year terms. Okay, after those 12 years, they have to be retained by the voters. Okay, so it's basically like a vote of confidence, where if that individual's decisions, those past 12 years, don't reflect the values of what Californians want, they don't have to vote them in. Okay, so again, something I like about our state is, again, it's a lifetime appointment with a little caveat. Again, the voters get a shot at you after 12 years. If again, you're not doing what your prior decisions speak to. So when it comes to due to the length of services, many of those Supreme Court justices will move on or retire before the 12 years. Okay, so think about it. Many of them, when they get to the state Supreme Court, they're close to 60, if not already in their 60s. And by the time those 12 years are over, they may be breathing down 80's neck. Okay, so again, they're not always firing at the best. So again, many of them want to retire. They don't want to have to think about serving a whole nother term of years. So again, they themselves will move on usually before time. So we have a Court of Appeals. We have 6 districts. I'm going to show you an illustration of those 6 districts in the next slide. And then we have 451 superior courts. Okay, so Tulare County Superior Court, Kings County Superior Court, Fresno County Superior Court, there are 451 of those court locations in the state. And then 1,646 judges. So judges in that way. So what is the breakdown of the Court of Appeals? So we are in the 5th District Court of Appeals in the state of California. So right there in the Central Valley, orange, indicative of that 5th District. So that's how that Court of Appeals is broken. All right, so California today. Okay, so what makes our state so unique and where other states wish they had the type of incentives and industry and commerce that we have here in California? Okay, so what is that? So if California was an independent nation, okay, its economy would rank either 5th or 6th. Okay, right now it would be 5th because Great Britain is going through some Brexit issues in that way. So when it comes to being the 5th largest economy in the world, right, this is with an annual gross national product of nearly $2.7 trillion. Okay? So in that way, specifically, where here in California, $2.7 trillion, 5th or 6th largest in the world. Okay, so this is just as a state. Okay, we are competing against countries because our economy is so strong. Okay, so what makes our economy so strong? So much of the state's strength comes from its economic diversity. Okay, so we have a lot of different industries that, again, other states only dream of. Okay, in the sense of the resources, the different industries, tech, military, otherwise. So again, all of these different things can go in with our state. So half of California, mostly desert and mountains, is actually already owned by the state or the federal government. Okay, so that's half of our state. So that's the different national parks, the different recreations. All of these would speak to, again, where half of our state is already owned by the federal or state government. In rural areas, a few big corporations control much of the state's rich farmlands. Okay, so here in the Central Valley, we know that very well in the sense that corporations, specifically when we're looking at not just the food stuff, okay, so not just the fruits, the vegetables, we're talking about more of the agriculture industrial complex. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, so that means the fertilizers, the insecticides, the herbicides, the water districts that are oftentimes involved. Again, this is where it creates that economy. Okay, so again, it's not just creating the food stuff. We're also having to spray, make sure, again, it's up to par to, again, what produce is supposed to be. All these different things that, again, speak to California's strength in agriculture. Okay? So making California the leading nation's farm state, obviously, like I said, we know that here in the Central Valley very well, including nearly half of the vegetables, fruits, and nuts, and 21% of the dairy products consumed nationally. That is amazing in so many different ways because, again, us as a state being able to feed half of the nation's fruits, vegetables, and nuts, I mean, that's really, really, really good. So state politics affect this huge economic force in labor relations, okay, environmental regulations, and water supply. Okay, so we know that very well. Environmental regulations oftentimes either restrict or not restrict, okay, how much water can be pumped out at any time. So I may have brought it up before. So different species, the Delta smelt, the kit fox, I believe. There are others that are endangered if more pumping is done, or at least that's the narrative that's given. Where that's why these restrictions and environmental protections oftentimes are at odds with each other, because again, there's a need for water, okay, and there's a need for storage, but again, on the other end, there are threats or possible threats to wildlife in some people's opinions. So again, being cognizant of these different forces that oftentimes are involved in business moving forward. All right. So this is that IMF rank. This was in 2016. But again, this is still very much indicative of where California is now fifth, because the United Kingdom, is going through some Brexit issues. That United States total does include the 2.7 trillion that we as a state have an output. Okay? So bringing it up, though, our state being shut down for a complete year, when you're talking about $2.7 trillion of output, you're talking about mass devastation. You're talking about a economic nuclear bomb. Because again, when you're talking about the state of California, a lot of different states rely on our agriculture, rely on our business to, fuel their businesses. So again, when you have this domino effect where, our state being shut down for so long, where some other states like Texas, Florida have said, you know what, it's going to be up to the individual if they want to go out and take a risk or not. Freedom exists in that way. Where again, California, we're taking a more cautious approach that some people like, some people don't. We're again, very political, very political. All right. So again, agriculture is big business, but it's not even close to the big businesses. Okay. So what do I mean by the big businesses? So manufacturing, especially in aerospace, defense, and high-tech industries, these are huge multi-million-dollar contracts that speak to, again, keeping our bases here in California. Let's say, obviously the Lemoore Naval Air Station. All of these things that, again, speak to the defense industry that exists, not just on our military bases, but that, again, speak to the broader economy that's pushed with regards to those huge areas of industry. So when it comes to at the end of the Cold War, jobs in California shifted to post-industrial occupations, so such as retail, sales, tourism, and services, although these jobs and sectors often pay low wages. Right? So the fact that, again, here in California, oftentimes the job market, it doesn't always show the true impact of what post-industrial jobs are. Okay. There are those, shitty jobs that, again, only teenagers are given, in the sense of, those retail jobs, fast food, different things of that nature, where, again, you're only getting paid minimum wage. Okay. And again, here in California, we're lucky. We have a $14 an hour minimum wage, going to be $15 next year, where other states, they're living off of, $7 or $8, in that way. So again, a lot of different states that, we have a higher cost of living. Obviously, here in California, we're paying a lot more in taxes, which, again, should be reflective of how much more we should be paid. Because it, and I know it, that if you have a $14 an hour job minimum wage, you are eking by simply paying your bills. Okay. You are not living in any way, because, again, the margin for error is so small when you're only making minimum wage in a costly state like California. So again, knowing that, our economy, the sense of, again, where and what it takes to live in our state. Okay. It's a lot more than other states, in the sense of, again, how much things cost. So what about the salvation of California's economy? Okay. So I have a firm belief that after COVID-19, once the curtain is lifted, these restrictions are lifted, that the California economy will rebound. Okay. We are a strong economy where, again, other states would only wish to have the types of industries that exist in our state. Okay? So this is especially in telecommunications. Okay, so all the telecoms, when it comes to Silicon Valley, entertainment. So we got Hollywood, all these different movies, these productions that happen here in the state. Medical equipment. Okay, so when we're talking about creating medical equipment, especially in the age of COVID, where it's a lot of these different things were lacking, ventilations, oxygen machines. So again, doing that on behalf of medical practices and the needs of citizens. Okay? International trade. So we know that very well. A lot of our products, a lot of our foodstuffs go to different states. Different countries. So whether it be Japan, whether it be Australia, a lot of these different agriculture packing houses, especially in our area, will go to those countries that again are, aching for California fruit or vegetables, because again, they don't get that in other parts of the world. So Silicon Valley, as I mentioned earlier, became the center for innovation in technology, for computers to software and internet-based businesses. Okay, so again, the dot-com boom really helped with, again, paving the way for what we have today, the internet, the information superhighway. Okay, all of these existence of technologies that had to be developed. Okay, and many of that was developed in Silicon Valley, with programming and the like, that made us a powerhouse in that area. So along with agriculture, high tech, telecoms, and other industries have made California a leader in trade at home and abroad. So again, at home here in our own country and abroad in the broader spectrum of the world. So this is the breakdown of the California economy in the sense of what is created. The two biggest ones are education, health, and other services. And then right there at 17%, real estate and rental and leasing. So obviously education in terms of the UCs, the CSUs, K through 12, all that stuff, huge portion of our economy. Okay? And then real estate, obviously, when you have properties that are, costing an arm and a leg, where oftentimes, different generations have a hard time even affording a home here in California, okay, let alone rent. Okay, rent is ridiculous as well. So again, that is a huge portion of our economy. So again, those two areas, 18 and 17% respectively. All right, so throughout its history, California has experienced, again, those economic ups and downs. Okay, so we are in a down right now because, again, small business is being crushed from having to abide by these restrictions and still having to be shut down and only giving takeout, all these different things, where this is not a new thing. Okay, in 2008, we experienced a huge downturn as well. Okay, so I have the firm belief that us as a state will be able to adapt, to change to different scopes of, again, how the economy is going to move forward, and in what direction it will move forward. Because again, when you're talking about what the new economy calls for, okay, post-COVID world is going to be very different. And I feel that California has the fuel in the economy to be able to take the necessary steps, reinvent itself with this new economy through post-COVID world, recover and move on. Right? Because again, if our state can't do it, no state can do it. Okay, because again, we have these economic safety nets in different industries. Okay, we don't have all of our eggs in one basket. Okay, I'll pick on Idaho for a second or something. We're not economy based on potatoes or anything. We're just, again, the idea of our diversity, different things of that nature. If anybody's from Idaho, I didn't mean to offend you. But again, where it comes to the notion of, again, why our economy is so strong. So another strength of California's economy is, believe it or not, small businesses. Okay, so again, where our small businesses have taken a huge hit this past year. Okay, that is a huge swath of our economy. So again, the idea of people being able to start up a business in their own image based on, again, their own strengths. Okay, so if you're good at being a mechanic, you're going to open up your own shop. If you're good at selling cars, maybe you'll have your ability to have a used car shop, or eventually an established car shop. So again, all of these different small businesses that exist in our area, where again, many are minority owned. Where we talked about earlier, the diversity of our state, many of our small businesses are minority owned. Okay, they're not, in the sense of, again, having a diversity. So when you're looking at what that does to, a better portion of our economy, again, this past year has just been devastating, okay, on small businesses as a whole. So in 2000, non-Hispanic white population ceased to be the majority, making California a majority minority state. Okay, so in 2000, during the census, Latinos were the majority in the state. Okay, so again, still seen as a minority in the nation's eyes, which I don't like that term minority. Seen less than, or the idea of. So again, when you look at what California is, it's considered a majority minority state, if that makes any sense, right? So one of the ideas of California that is a negative, okay, is a very big negative. So the gap between the rich and the poor in California is amongst the largest in the US and is still growing. Okay, so in the sense of, again, so let me get to what Jesse said. So all these pros, but still a clown in the nation when it comes to gun laws and prison control. So based on, again, one's opinion, I feel you, Jesse, in the sense of, again, where one can interpret things of the nature of, again, where our state has so many positives, where, again, some of these negatives that I'm going to mention eclipse all of these issues, where, again, this notion of this gap between the rich and the poor, right? There are those that are doing so well in Silicon Valley, Sonoma, San Diego, Los Angeles County, that are just, kicking ass, making millions, teetering on billionaires. And then you have those that are just simply getting by, okay? They are living off of credit cards. There are those that may be, having to, do without, in their own stomach or in their own personal life to, make up for not having. So again, this gap between who has and who doesn't have is huge here in California. So while many are doing well at the top, others are barely getting by at the bottom as the middle class is shrinking. So here, again, the middle class is shrinking based on, again, income. Okay, so again, how much one makes based on, again, where they're making it at. Okay, because again, cost of living, they're going to pay you more in the Bay Area than they are going to pay you here in Fresno County or Tulare County or Kings County. So again, when you're looking at cost of living, these areas also have adjusted what they consider what a livable wage is. So if you live closer to a bigger city, oftentimes you're going to get paid more for doing the same thing. So let's say if I was a professor in the Bay Area, I would be getting paid more based on, again, that cost of living. So again, it's that adjusted rate based on, again, what it takes to even survive in that area. Okay, so what are the biggest cities in the nation that have that gap between the rich and the poor? Okay, so home ownership here in California is also lagging behind the national average, especially for Latinos and Blacks. Okay, so it's close to, even to get into a semi-decent home, you're going to be looking at a $250,000. Okay, when it's all said and done, to have a simple home, not even anything great, to even own a home here in the Central Valley. So oftentimes, knowing what that means, it's very difficult to make that type of a payment when our area doesn't have those types of wages or those types of industries that will pay that much in that way. So oftentimes, again, this home ownership is lagging behind with minorities. Right? So what are those cities? So we know there's actually, in California, we have, in the top 10, we have 4 of those cities. Okay, so the largest gap between the rich and the poor, this was from 2011 to 2016. Okay, so the top 2 right there, Silicon Valley, San Jose, California, and San Francisco, California, right there, 1 and 2. Okay, that is the largest gap. Obviously, you got Silicon Valley there. You got people that are, living on the streets, and then you have people that are living in multi-million-dollar penthouses as billionaires. Okay, so again, seeing that gap, right? And then at number 6, okay, our state capital, okay, Sacramento is right there at number 6 with that gap between the rich and the poor. Okay. And then at number 9, right there, San Diego. If I was not here, I'd be living in San Diego. Maybe one day I'll retire there. But it is a huge gap between the rich and the poor. Okay, when it comes to that as well, 4 of our largest cities in our state meet that threshold for the largest change of the gap between the rich and the poor. So that's very indicative of us as a state, being very unaffordable for a large population, a large swath of the population. Because again, you see where it takes a lot to live in a big city. It takes a lot to live, in a city regardless. So again, when you're seeing these figures, you know that here in a state, yeah, we have our positives, but then again, the affordability here is shrinking because again, you have these different notions as to, again, taxation, all these things that go into having populations either leave, come back, and this is actually a part of the quick right that I want to express to you right now. Right? So this is the at issue today. Okay, so the future of California. Okay, so when you're talking about the future, we are going to get a decision to either stay here, live. Okay, you are all going to have that decision. You either came here from another area and are looking to leave, or you're looking to stay. Okay, and that's the broader area of California. Okay? So based on these pros and cons, I asked these 3 questions. All right. So first one being, what is the most difficult challenge facing California in the next 10 years? All right, so the next 10 years, you may be, breathing down 30's neck, maybe at 28 years old or something like that. You might be in your 30s if you're at 20 or above now, but thinking in 10 years, okay? So specifically speaking to, again, either, you're either going to be in the state or you're not, but what do you think these next 10 years, what do you think the biggest problem or issue with California will be? Okay. And you're not limited to the ones I list. Okay. Economy, infrastructure, gun rights and laws, terrorism, immigration sanctuary cities, education, climate change. Those all can be definitely problems. If you think it's COVID-19, you can throw that in there because again, we're still going to be reeling from, not having a $2.7 trillion economy for an entire year and change. So again, when you're looking at what that is, we may still be reeling 10 years from now. Hopefully not. But again, when you're looking at what the Great Recession did, many states were still reeling when they were affected by COVID. Right? So number 2, what will it take to overcome or succeed in regards to these challenges? Okay, so maybe doing a little problem solving, okay, seeing where you think these problems can be addressed and possibly solved. Okay, again, seeing where whatever issue you choose as being that challenge and looking at problem solving, seeing where, again, an angle as to, again, what your opinion may call for. Okay, what action our leaders here in California could take to possibly address that challenge. Okay. And then number 3, okay, as a registered California voter, okay, and even if you're not registered to vote or you're not old enough yet, what can you do to make a difference in that challenge? Okay, so I asked this in the sense that using the example of, let's say, an initiative. Okay, so using an initiative where you're gaining, writing out, getting people to sign a petition of some sort. That's initiative. Okay, that's again what Sean Parker did to get cannabis legalized in California, or simply possibly starting a YouTube channel, talking about TikTok about what the issues in California are. I don't know. Those are just, again, examples. They're not, you don't have to do them. But again, seeing where as a California voter or a member of the educated California citizenry that wants to, again, see where they can help, see where they can put in their 2 cents regarding what that challenge is. Okay, so again, that third one, seeing where, again, what can you do personally to address that challenge? Okay, whether it be if you think it's climate change, going up and clearing out some of that debris. How is that going to get addressed? Or putting PG&E on notice for causing these fires during the summer. So again, knowing what your issue and challenge is, and then finding ways to kind of address it as a California voter, or again as a educated California citizen. All right. Does anybody not understand that, or does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, or issues regarding that quick write? No, really? Oh man, that's cool. I'm honestly wanting to, hear what you feel as your challenge, because again, it can be something as crazy as, let's say, the big one. Okay, so there's supposed to be a huge earthquake that's going to just rattle the state and devastate us. They've been talking about that for, I think 30 years that I can remember. So again, it's not going to say that it's going to happen, but who's to say it's not? If you think the big one is going to happen in 10 years or within that span. We didn't think COVID-19 was going to happen. So if it's something as that in terms of what the challenge may be, go for it. Go for it. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, again, understanding what these challenges are, and then, determining by our own self, whether, again, we want to stay in this state or not. Because again, what these challenges build in our mind, cost of living, all these different things that may or may not be affected. So again, doing your due diligence, finding what those pros and cons mean to you, and establishing, again, what those challenges that you address may call for. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or issues before I let everyone go? No? All right. So I will be grading your video writing assignments this week. So if you haven't turned it in, make sure to get it in ASAP. You don't want to bleed away any points. Also, if you are missing quick writes, make sure to turn them in ASAP. Okay. Other than that, have a great rest of the week. I will see everyone next Tuesday. Have a great one. Peace.